Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Phone Booth Fighting. In addition to the free weekly podcast that myself and Frank put out there for you via the YouTube, iTunes, and all the other places where you get podcasts. While Corona quarantine is going on, Frank and I are doing extra shows, multiple semi-daily shows over at our ever-growing Patreon page, which is patreon.com/phone booth fighting. Easy to remember, patreon.com/phone booth fighting. Head on over there, peruse it if you haven't yet, and check it out. See what we have to offer, different levels to join up at, and in accord with those levels, you get different incentives as well, including a brand new Corona Quarantine Chronicles sticker that we're going to send to anybody that joins at any level. So patreon.com/phone booth fight it out, and we will be with you way more than one day a week if you join myself and Frank Miro there. Now, if you're looking at your screen and you're thinking, holy shit, Frank Miro. No, that's not Frank. That is buddy gorgeous George Garcia from MMA Junkie.com. What's up, George? How you doing, man?
Doing great. How you doing, Richard?
Doing great, and good to have you now. George has very generously accepted my offer to jump in here and talk some MMA and fill in for Frank this one particular episode. Frank was unable to tape today, so I didn't want that to disrupt MMA talk flow. So I got George on, and that's not any coincidence because George, while we're plugging Patreon pages, we ought to plug one that you and your brother Goes Garcia and myself are doing. That one is called patreon.com/Triple G Show. Triple G Show at Patreon. And we're basically doing the same thing, a number of episodes and extra content coming on a weekly basis. Now, before we get into any MMA talk, I want to talk about that for a second, because part of the motivation in doing this episode with you today is to let our Phone Booth Fighting listeners know that there's also another show going on with Triple G Show on Patreon. This one actually started before the coronavirus shut everything down, right? We were a couple of months ahead of that curve, and it started out because things changed for you guys over at MMA Junkie Radio. So just give everybody an idea, an overview of what we're doing over there and why it started to begin with.
Well, it was around the time of late last summer when Sirius XM and MMA Junkie Radio just went in a different direction. We were with them for 5 years, and we split apart. You know, basically every year it would just kind of be, was like, you know, I guess behind the curtain. Every year we just kind of entered into another 1-year contract. But this past year they decided to just go in another direction. I think what they wanted to do is home grow their own shows, and MMA Junkie Radio was an established show that came on, so we had like a different type of relationship with them. Either that, or maybe they were being kind and just thought we sucked. Who knows? But we were no longer going to be on Sirius XM, and I knew that at the same time it was going to change the future of Goes and I and what we were going to do. Because look, we've been doing daily shows for 12 and a half years at that point. It's fun. It's us. It's our identity, but it's a grind. And at the same time, I just knew that would kind of, there'd be a domino effect where we would probably have different ideas that we've always wanted to do and that the website may want to do with us. And that's more video, basically. So now going from 5 days a week to 2 times a week, it's not live. Going from 2 hours a day to 30 minutes an episode, it was completely a shock to the system. So I knew there was going to be a lot of time to fill, because our lives for the last 12 years have been talking mixed martial arts and everything that comes with it. And how are we going to get to it all, you know? So, yeah, we were looking for different ways to make this happen. And honestly, Richard, about anywhere between 3 to 5 years ago, you had mentioned wanting to, have an exchange of ideas or do stuff together.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, immediately around that time, we knew that, hey, let's look at ways in which we can continue to do what we normally do, have our full-time jobs, but on the side, maybe have a little bit of fun and maybe replace a little bit of what we lost with having to fill the 10 hours a day, but also just spreading our wings. So here we are with Triple G Show.
Yep, it's patreon.com/Triple G Show. Just to give everybody an idea of what we're doing over there, just yesterday. And big credit to Goes for producing a fabulous bit. I'm sure you guys brainstormed this thing together, but he got real involved in the production of it. You guys had this idea to do, while we're all stuck in our houses here, a fantasy MMA draft, but it wasn't a draft for MMA fights. It was a draft for a virtual field day event. Things like tug of war, obstacle course, and then some weird ones like a beer chugging contest and target shooting. And the deal was that you guys drafted rosters, and then a draft was held, and then those teams were put up on the Patreon page, and the patrons could vote on whose team they thought would win each individual event. Now, it was you fielded a team. It was Goes, he fielded a team. It was supposed to be me, but I ended up hosting the draft instead. But the ringer in all this was noted UFC standout Ricardo Lamas. He competed with us and did not one, but two shows. Ricardo was great on this. He did the draft show 2 days ago, and then he did the full reveal show yesterday where we went over the results. And I won't give out any spoilers and talk about who won, because people may want to go over to the Patreon page and check that out themselves. But it was hilarious. Like, it was well worth doing. That's always one of my favorite things about working with guys, is just the goofy hypotheticals we come up with, and what would you do if, how much money would it take to do this thing or that thing? And this was really elaborate extension of that. Didn't you think that that bit went off incredibly well over a 2-day period?
It did, because first of all, I think Goes wanted to do something along the lines, you know how when March Madness happens, people are like, hey, what are your 64 favorite cereals? Hey, who are the 64 hottest chicks? And then they have a March Madness out of that, because these brackets are available everywhere you want. It's just a matter of filling in instead of college basketball teams, whatever subject that you're ranking. And so he wanted to do something to go along with the NFL draft, which was last night. And, I can't take any of the credit. I'd love to, Richard, because wrestling heel managers are some of my favorite people on earth, and they love taking credit for people they haven't done. So that's totally I would love to capitalize on it, but it was all Goes. He came up with it. I just said, well, what's the criteria? And then I learned I went ahead and tried to exploit the loopholes in it. But yeah, not to give too much away, we basically drafted 6 fighters, 6 men, 2 women, and we had all these contests, and we were told you need this many for the obstacle course, this many for the shooting contest. And from there, we just kind of went based off of our knowledge of fighters. Who did we think would win that particular contest? We all had a chance to draft and then make a pitch as to why we did it, because a few of us had some outliers, and basically it's up to the fans to decide. So I knew I had to convince them of some of my questionable picks. But yeah, we had a great time. And as it unfolded, I think the silliness of it all just kind of like you said, Richard, it's like barbershop talk, or it's just locker room talk. What would you do if, we were just laughing along at the results of it all. Ricardo was excellent. I don't think he knew what he originally signed up for, or that we would take 2 hours of his life, but he was right in there cracking jokes, busting balls. So it really turned out great. And then we had a photo finish, which again, we're not going to give away results, but let's just say there was a lot more beer chugging than expected.
Yep. Well, all our Phone Booth Fighting listeners, head on over there. Just check out the page, see what you think. And if you want to see that 2-day extravaganza that Gorgeous just teased, then you can sign up and check that out as well. All right, George. So, this has been a time like none other in the world of mixed martial arts, with everything going on with the coronavirus pandemic, because MMA it's weird. It has shut down like a lot of other businesses, like every other business.
Yeah.
But it is literally fighting, at least in the UFC's sphere, it is fighting to not be shut down. Like the fight that we have been covering, rather than a fight between two mixed martial artists, seems to be the fight between the promotion and general social thinking, as opposed to what should happen and what shouldn't happen. And they're bound and determined to put a fight card on, even if it's on a deserted island with no people there, and then that gets shut down. But wait a second, it's rescheduled only a few weeks later. And as we do this right now, unless we hear any different, and we certainly could hear different, I think May 8th, right, is the date for UFC 249. So just for, those who don't hear you on a daily basis, just give me an idea of your overview of all this and where this thing sits you as it pertains to mixed martial arts, and I guess particularly the UFC.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick correction. It'll be May 9th, not May 8th.
May 9th. Thank you. May 9th
will be the date for UFC in Brazil, the UFC 250 card. By the way, they're keeping the 249 numeric label for this fight card. And so where I sit with everything, I guess, is I'm going to be a fence rider on this question, because I don't want to be a hypocrite. On the one hand, as a human being, I feel like I have a soul, and I'm not just thinking about myself, but I'm thinking about my family, my friends, and I want most of us to come out of this. I want all of us to come out of this alive. This is taking lives, for crying out loud, all over the world. Sure, when you look at the statistics, and we got to go down to something like 0.001 or whatever it is, regardless, this is still something that, had we not separated and quarantined ourselves, could have been way worse. So applause to everyone for hunkering down and sitting at home and weathering this storm. It's going to cost some lives. It's cost some jobs and all that. But I'm still willing to write it out if I only want to get with one tsunami wave, Richard. I don't want another wave. I don't want to survive a wave and then go, oh, here comes another one. Now, the flip side is, this is our business here. And Dana White leading the charge and trying to get the sport back online, that's the part that appeals to me, because the website that we function with works on the fact that we need readers to the site, we need stories to cover, we need events to cover, and we also need advertising for live. I mean, that's no secret. If companies are going down, obviously that can suffer, so it can trickle down to us. So I understand everybody that says we need to get back to work. That's the two sides of it. So yeah, am I privately cheering on Dana White and hoping he pulls it off? Yes, but I also want him to do it very safely, and I want him to take all the precautions necessary and not just do it without him crossing T's and dotting I's. And that's the fine line. How do you judge Dana White? Perfect example yesterday. And I hope you don't kill me for going down this route. Just look at the president. He has these ideas of what he wants to do, but one little hiccup there is, as he was speaking or misspoke in regards to the whole bleach and all that stuff. And that's not what he wanted to convey. I get that. And I know people are busting his chops, but that right there almost just leads you to believe that there's something he feels is more important than other things. And with Dana White, I'm still trying to get the read on him. What's more important to him, the business, or really looking out for his employees, his fighters, the fans, and the media? So far, I'm saying I'm giving him a C grade. I'm not that impressed, but what am I going to say, man? Of course, when the fights happen, I'm going to watch it. We're going to interview fighters. It's going to be good for us. And I don't know, man. It's messed with me pretty good mentally. That's for sure.
I think one thing that happens in the culture of mixed arts, if you think about it, is that there really is rarely ever a time that much outside of that world plays a significant role inside of that. It's very metaphorical for like when the cage door locks. Like once that cage door closes, yeah, the week leading up, interviews and fight week and publicity, all the rest of that. But once the cage door closes, all that is being thought about or focused on is people fighting each other. And it appears to me that one of the things that is very difficult for mixed martial arts, professional mixed martial arts, to reconcile is the rare occasion like this moment right now where they cannot help but have another crucial factor in that cage with them. So right now, metaphorically speaking, it's two people in that cage wanting to fight each other, but there's a third fighter in that cage, and that fighter's called coronavirus. And you can't get a cage. It's like everybody standing there looking at the cage going, what is this third factor in here? Get them out of here so we can get this fight going. You can't. They are, not only are they refusing to leave, they're so powerful, you can't boot them out. And that is the most difficult thing right now for somebody like Dana to deal with and reconcile, because in virtually any other time, this is just not how their world operates. It's a very, when it comes down to it, it's a primitive exercise of, two men or two women going at it one-on-one. They know how to do all the 21st century promotion and the technology and everything leading up to it. But then when it comes to actual fight time, it's back to the caveman days. And that cannot happen right now. One other point that you brought up about wanting to avoid a second wave of this. I would draw an analogy to a fight camp, because one of the things that I really tried to keep in mind when I was training for my last fight, and granted that's a very low level of competition given where I'm at, but the analogy I'm going to draw, I think, would apply all the way to the elite professional fighters, and it's this: when you're going through that fight camp, which 8 weeks, whatever it is for most fighters, the thing that I tried to keep reinforcing in my head was, I don't want to leave any possibility for what if. The days where I didn't feel like getting into the gym, the days where I was like, oh my God, maybe I should do the motions. I'm sore, I'm hurting, I'm feeling it. I just tried to keep in mind, if I lose the fight, but I gave it 100% everything I have, then I won't leave here with any questions, right? But if I can if I lose that fight and I walk out of there going, okay, but if I'm being honest with myself, Richard, you does about a 75%, 80% effort in training camp. I can count those 3 days, those 4 days, those 5 days where I kind of coasted or I didn't show up or whatever. That was the fear. That's what I wanted to avoid. And I guess the analogy I'm drawing, and I want to ask you what you think about this, is I think we can kind of look at that the same way with professional mixed martial arts right now. Like wanting to put these fight cards on, this is that day in fight camp where we're like, look, we've been so good about just staying in our houses and social distancing and everything. On one day, right? What's one day going to do? We got to blow off some steam. We got to enjoy ourselves. We got to get back to living. But what if that one day or that one event amounts to that week we took off a camp or we didn't really show up, and then that second wave hits? And then, we're looking at it going, well, if we're being honest, I think we know what happened here. And now not only are events canceled for weeks at a time, what if it's worse? What if it sets us back so far that now we're talking about not putting on events for much longer than any of us ever thought? I know that is a long analogy, but does that make any sense to you whatsoever?
Of course. It was very well said. And, you're not some 12-year-old that has life as as an adult. Not only are you an adult, you've lived through many parts of adulthood, seen a lot, and so have I. And a lot of the analogies I've been using is like this baseball and football, when we've been comparing to like what PFL did. They just canceled it altogether. But at least their fighters now know this is where I sit. This is how I can prepare myself for next year. And it looks like maybe next year they'll start sooner, so maybe it won't be a whole year that they wait. But either way, they know where they stand. Right now, you have so many fighters that are trying to figure out where they stand, and it's probably affecting them physically and mentally. And then guess what? A lot of them are going to get in there and they're going to cash a check, sure, and some, half are going to win and half are going to lose, unless there's a draw. But you know what I mean. I bet you a lot of them are going to get home and go, the check's nice, but why I got into this sport, there was nothing even close to the satisfaction of, fighting for why I also want to fight. You don't just want to beat the person that's in front of you. I mean, there's something that comes with the whole package of fight week. And they're not getting that. They're not fighting in front of fans. They're going to fight with a lot of like stress. They're not even going to go in there 100%. I'll bet you both fighters are going to be between 50 and 75%. How much of a camp can you give? If you're just hitting pads, you're not properly training. It may even look sloppy. And what do they say? Sometimes when you're not at 100%, you might even get hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All for what? I mean, if you tore your knee right now, what do you say? Well, time to get a surgery. In these next 9 months, I'm just gonna, hit it hard on rehab, and I'm gonna come strong in next year. Well, no money's coming in while you're hurt. You're just hurt. You just kind of deal with it. And I feel like that's what the pandemic is. It's like we all an injury of sorts that we have to just kind of get through, and we got to do our rehab. What's our rehab? Staying at home, social distance, mask when you're in public, everything the experts are saying. I don't even want to talk about this guy on TV or that guy on TV or that lady or whatever. Let's just listen to the experts. It's working, folks, and we're getting close. I think we've hit the top. In a lot of countries are already heading downward. Some are apexing, some are slightly heading downward. But it seems like the worst is over where it's hit. Now, there are other countries in other hemispheres, if we want to get even, put out there a bigger geographical area, the Southern Hemisphere. Latin America, Africa, they're going to get hit pretty hard as well, but they're going to go through the same thing we are. And luckily, they're going to be able to learn from how we've dealt with it. Italy, the UK, some of us have done better than others, but it's just something that's going to traverse the whole world. And I think if we get it right the first time, we can win. Take a look at New Zealand. Look what they've done. Take a look at Germany. Germany's got some high testing numbers, and yes, of course, we all have deaths, but nothing compared to other countries that have just gotten bludgeoned through this. If we pay attention and hunker down, I'm telling you, we can get through this a lot sooner. The vaccine is probably going to come a lot sooner. You got the top people in the world that are trying to, figure this thing out. Now there's talk about antibodies and more testing and all that just comes from a good night's sleep. The next day there's a lot more data out there. 1 week later there's a lot more data out there. You know what I mean? So we got to pay attention to the experts.
Yeah, it's also looking at this on a macro level, I think we also, if we're really being good stewards of this sport, we have to think about the perception overall outside of the world of MMA into professional sports in general vis-a-vis society, meaning that, it's not just half of the sports or 75% of the sports have shut down. It's all of them. And it pretty much happened in unison. Baseball, basketball, hockey, football was out of season, but they had a virtual draft yesterday. They put everybody in or whenever that was, a couple days ago, they put everybody in a big room together. Everybody has agreed, okay, shut it down for right now. Mixed martial arts, even though it has come a long, long way and it's got a big network deal on ESPN, all the rest of that. And we know what it was like back in the real dark ages of, pretty much the only place the sport got talked about was on the internet and all that. even though it's come a long way, it's still the real edgy, like, cousin to a lot of other professional sports that have been long since accepted by mainstream society. I mean, we're still dealing with stigma, about cage fighting and human cockfighting, all that kind of stuff. So given the fact that we're still pretty new to that, I think another thing that also has to be considered here is when this sport's been invited to the grown-ups table, right? They're not sitting over there with skateboarding or whatever anymore. Now we're sitting down with the heads of the NFL commissioner and the NBA commissioner and all the rest of that. I think you have to consider that you're still the new kid on that very big, desirable block. Because when all the rest of them are going, no, we're all in unison, we're shutting this down, you're being the one who's banging the table going, no, not us. We're going to be back. We're going to be first back. We're ready to come back right now. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, I think that should be considered, because when this chapter is written in history, and hopefully it goes incredibly smoothly, hopefully we're all being overly cautious, and believe I will be happy to have been deemed overly cautious if that's the way this thing shakes out.
I agree with that.
Yeah, if somebody goes, well, hey, remember when you used to wear a mask everywhere? I'll be like, yeah, I know. Boy, I'm really glad that it turned out that wasn't as necessary as we thought. But we have to prepare for the worst. Let's say it's not best case scenario. Let's say there are hiccups. Let's say there is a second wave, all these kinds of things. Do we as a sport really want to be the group that everybody's going to point to going, well, I'll tell you what, all the professional sports pretty much got in lockstep right away, except for wacky cousin MMA over there. I told you we should have been careful about them. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but inevitably it's going to happen. I think the combat sports, the one-on-one sports, or even the ones that have a tier, I guess, of social distancing, like NASCAR. I'm not particularly sure how many there are in a pit, but I think they're just obviously more degrees of separation than a huddle in football, or how tight people are in basketball. Baseball even might be a little bit different. I think the catcher and the home plate umpire definitely aren't going to have the social distancing necessary. But if you just look at every sport, some are going to lead the way. And it's going to be the one-on-one sports. I think golf, I think NASCAR, I think maybe tennis. They're going to be the ones that come sooner. But at the same time, they're not the ones in the highest pecking order, not the ones that answer to the biggest television contracts, the advertising, that pays for these television contracts, and these big stadiums that need to be filled with fans that carry this. So it will be us, and let's make no bones about it. Vince McMahon, Dana White, the state of Florida, all that has ties to the very top. And they are basically, they're shrewd. I mean, promoters are shrewd businessmen, and we already know how they function, and they're, I don't know. I mean, none of this should come as a shock to us. Dana White doesn't need the money. He's damn right about that. But Dana White also doesn't realize he's addicted to power and making large sums of money that he doesn't need anyway. I mean, why? That's why people, even though they're filthy rich at 30, or 40, you don't really hear them not retiring again. What do? They take on another project and they try and make more of it, and maybe now when they're 40, they have kids, whereas when they're 30, they didn't. You can only golf so much. You can only do so much. I think it's just what makes them get out of bed and function, is doing stuff that maybe sometimes even goes against the grain. I think that's a high for him.
Yeah, and just going back to one of my original points, I think it's just that virtually any other scenario, everything you just described it's all self-contained. Like that whole methodology only exists and applies kind of right in here and then just in a space about this is not the whole world. Now we're talking about the whole world. And you're trying to take your little, well, this is how we run this house. You know, like, I mean, there's ways I keep house, you know, like the entire world is not kept as neatly as my house is. Now I can control a neat house, but if I said, okay, I'm going to step out my door today and I'm going to insist by God that the entire world is kept as neatly as this house, I'm insane in a matter of minutes because I just can't practically apply it. It just doesn't work. Now I can step right back inside my house and keep it that way. But it's just, it's not going to take otherwise. What if we did this, George? I just thought of this compromise. Maybe I'll suggest this to Dana. What if when they come back, they do it gradually, and for the first, you know, set of fights, in order to better observe social distancing, we take grappling out of it, and we only allow the fighters with the longest reaches to fight first. So basically, we just get John and Alexander Gustafsson maybe 2 or 3 times before we do anything else.
Stefan Struve and that big old push.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. I think if he still has those fibers in him where he really loves to see a good fight, when everyone's gone after he's written the last check, proverbial check, and he's done the last interview, if there's interviews, he's going to come home and go, it wasn't the same. This was stupid, you know? Like I said, if the experts were saying, hey, man, 2023 is when we can all start commingling, and then I'd be like, yeah, fuck, you know, well, why are we living? And you know, maybe there is some risk versus reward decisions that we have to make. But I'm telling you, man, I see it already. And if they just had a little bit more foresight, I think about a 2 month, I think let's pick July 1st. I think by July 1st, he can actually have fights at the Apex Center in Nevada under the right commission in an area where he can control. And it may not be full on 15,000 people, but it'll be a process that we're getting to a lot closer, you know, to something that I think he can appreciate. He appreciates Dana White Contender Series. You and I have been to Dana White Contender Series, and we walk out of there going, hey, that was a great night of fights. And we're not just saying it because we're trying to plug our blogs or sites or anything. It's because we really, really felt that. We knew that the winner had a chance to graduate to the UFC or a couple winners or whatever. And so we understood the stakes, the rules, and, you know, and there was something to it. Now, was it a pay-per-view? Of course not. But still, I think that's a lot closer. I think basically, to put it in terms like this, if you're going to think that May 9th is going to be like the times you've gone to a great NFL game, nope. It's probably going to be like the time you've gone to a relative who's nonstop haggling you to come check out their little 5-year-old, and they're playing flag football, and they all run around like in little packs of insects, you know. They don't even spread out and call plays. They're all just running around, or maybe even soccer is a better example. You know, they're all just around the ball and kicking it. And yeah, it's cute. Well, when you go home, you didn't watch man, for crying out loud. You went there to support somebody you love. I'm telling you that it's just not going to be the same. And the only reason we're going to be crazy about it is because we haven't had anything close to it, you know, for a few months. If you know, we'll use Lent, for example. Us Catholics, for 40 days, we get away from something. Let's say I love Dr. Pepper, and for 40 days, I say, not only am I going to not drink Dr. Pepper, I'm just going to drink water. Well, guess what? On Easter Sunday, when you go, hey, George, you want a Dr. Pepper to go along with, you know, what the Easter picnic food? Dude, that's going to be one of the best Dr. Peppers I've had because I've acquired a thirst for something that I missed. You know what I mean? But I'm telling you, man, I think he's making a big mistake, and I don't think we're that far off from at least getting it off the ground way more safely than.
You bring up an interesting point about Nevada, because if you look at the CDC's charts, state to state, who's got the most outbreaks, where the most concern is, very fortunately for those of us living in Nevada, we're at the way lighter end of that. When the map is color coded and it's, deep white to deep red or deep blue or whatever, we're on the lightest end of that. Still, recommendations, I think, model show the earliest recommended opening date I saw as of yesterday was like somewhere between June 1st and June 15th, I think it was. But we're way more fortunate than other states are in terms of that. And the UFC, not only headquartered here in Las Vegas, but the facility, like you talked about, where they're doing Contender Series now, all of that is in place. It is set to go. I mean, they have the benefit of having a beautiful infrastructure here. If you were going to host fights with no audience, man, ready-made. That studio is ready to go. And what I'm saying is, so if you wait a little bit longer, I can tell you Nevada is going to open up before a lot of other states are. So right now you're trying to rush it by going to others. You're working in other states and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, if you wait just a little bit longer, you're in the catbird seat because you got a perfect facility. You're going to be in one of the states that opens up the soonest. And when it opens up, all this controversy goes away. There may still be people going, well, shouldn't you maybe wait a little bit longer? But it won't be this sort of like risk of sort of social outcasting that you're running, trying to get ahead of a state itself, getting some sort of exemption to be what you're doing. That's a great point. I mean, it's not like the UFC's headquartered in New York State, where you could be looking at it going, oh my God, we're probably going to be the last one. We go ahead and wait for everybody else. That's not really the case here.
Yeah. And I'm sure they could probably, they could make things work a lot easier. Their former partners were the Fertitta brothers, who own the station's casinos. And you know that whether it's Governor Sisolak or Mayor Goodman or whoever goes, okay, we're open, and all these doors just open magically to all these resorts, they're not going to be full. In fact, I'm hearing that certain hotels are going to open up first. You know what I mean? And slowly it's going to happen. Because what you want to do is you don't want to have, all these dealers standing there and not having no one to deal to. So what you'll probably say is this one's closed, but 10 miles up the road, that one's open. And we have Stations casinos that are open all over town. A few of them are going to be slow in doing so. I bet you the UFC could probably make a decent deal with Stations casinos and say, hey, look, we'll buy out this block of rooms, where it's just us. And then we'll transport them here. And so any form of quarantine that they want to do, they'll have a lot more of an easier way of doing it. They have the UFC PI, their testing, their doctors, their whole network is here. And now you know what's coming back? Early on during this pandemic, they said, hot weather, dry weather, it's good for you. Then we got away from it. Now I'm hearing that maybe it's a play again. You know what I mean? And it's not going to get any hotter in the United States, other than maybe Phoenix, than Las Vegas, Nevada. So I just see a lot of advantages, and a lot of advantages doing it the right way and minimizing the chances of one of your employees or one of your fighters who are regarded as independent contractors having to suffer something fatally. And even if somebody didn't die, the fact that one of those fighters or one of those employees or just anyone associated with it has to go through what those people are going through on ventilators, and let's just say they do pull through, I'm telling you, man, that's some scary stuff. You know what I mean? And sometimes it takes something like that for other people to wake up. And I think Dana White's on the far end of that a little bit. I just think he's a little bit more callous to it, you know. But I know deep down in there he's got a heart somewhere, and I know he's got a brain, and I think he should just, that brain should tell him who are the experts, listen, act accordingly off of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's so tough right now because it's like you're not going to feel the consequences until you feel the consequences, you know? I mean, I understand the primal instinct of, I mean, my window's open right now, you know, it's a beautiful day. You know, there's, you know, my neighbors that I like hanging out with or something. I'm going to run over there and sit in their living room, you know, 2 feet apart and catch up or whatever. I mean, it's like everything about all the life that you've lived up to this point says, of course we're going to do that. What's wrong with doing it? It's you know what, I was thinking the other day about how when, you know, the new normal takes hold, even if we don't completely get rid of the handshakes and all that kind of stuff, we'll see what ends up happening with that. You know, most people go to the fist bump or whatever. I'm like a very like cordial person, you know, if I meet somebody. And I mean, instinctively, if the first time we're up at the studio and you introduce me to somebody, oh yeah, this is so-and-so with, you know, Mandalay Bay, I'm wondering if I won't just instinctively, hey, Richard Hunter, nice to meet you, you know, stick my hand out and then have that 2 or 3 second pot where I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, sorry, boy. you know, I mean, it's like that. Even as aware of all this as I am, you still wonder if there's going to be things like that that's just going to be like, you know, yeah, that's right. I'm in England. We're driving on the other side of the road. I got to really get used to that, you know, moments. So I understand. I understand how counterintuitive all this is, especially if you're at the pinnacle of success doing this thing. But it just goes to show, man, we can close on this point. But I'll pitch this to you. One of the real lessons that I have learned experiencing this in the 6 weeks or so is how quickly you realize that virtually everybody's in the same boat. Like, as far as jobs that we all have, you know, in the digital age where you think, oh, everything's remote, everything's, you know, you can do from home, you can do on a computer. Yeah, a lot of that's true. But it was incredible to me realizing how many jobs really in the traditional sense depend on face interaction. And I'm talking about from people that make minimum wage all the way up to people that make millions and millions of dollars a year. I made a list when this happened of people I knew that whose jobs weren't going to be affected by this. And it was a short list. I mean, it was like maybe 5 people I knew that were like accountants and stuff like that. You know, case in point, my phone booth fighting podcast partner, Frank Meir, who is in a different income bracket than I'm in. Guess what? We're both in the same income right now because neither one of us can go to our jobs. So we're making the exact same amount of money because we're in this podcast together. I mean, it really very quickly shows you who all's in the same boat and also who all has the jobs that you never thought about appreciating before. But all of a sudden you're looking at the guy stocking the shelves at the local grocery store going, damn, glad that guy's still doing that job.
Yeah, or the checkers at Walmart or Albertsons,
yes.
EMT. Yes. Much love for the doctors and nurses, and they're there in the trenches. But a lot of those people that are driving the ambulances or coming out to the homes and tending to people, all the healthcare workers, they really are risking their lives. And look, we've said a couple things here, a couple words that stood out to me. And one word was primal, and I just keep thinking of those instincts from when man was first on this planet, and somehow they came across a fire, and I don't know what language cavemen use, but I'll just use unga, pointing, and at some point somebody touches, the top of the flame, and ow, this is easy to figure out, man. When I'm here at home, I can't get coronavirus. When I do go to Walmart or Albertsons or wherever it is that I go, Why am I wearing a mask? I didn't used to wear a mask before, Caveman George. Oh, I know, because the experts are telling me that there's a chance that I could give it to someone and someone could give it to me. When I come back from Walmart, why am I wiping shit down? Oh, because there could be droplets. Well, had I not gone to Walmart, I wouldn't be doing this. Yeah, but had you not gone to Walmart, guess what? You were running out of eggs, and all this is so simple. It's a simple equation. It just sucks, and none of us are saying that it doesn't suck, or that we never want to go back to work. We're just saying that logic. Listen to science and logic and data. You got your answer right there. The further we get away from it, just like other pandemics, we will be safe and we'll be able to do it all again. It just so happens that in the pandemic world, just like hurricanes are categorized as a 1 and a 2 and a 3, and the 5 is the worst and it's destructive. This is a F5. Yeah. I don't know how they rate pandemics, but this is an F5 and it's going to fuck us up, unfortunately, and it has already. But now we got to learn from it, and we will learn from it going forward. But for right now, we're just hunkering down. We're in our basements or however it is that you deal with an F5 hurricane, the sandbags, board up the windows, and let us know when it's done and when it's safe to go back out.
That's it. Thanks for guest hosting this one with me, Gorgeous George. You can check out his still an integral part of the MMAJunkie.com family, self and Goes Garcia over there. But in addition to that, once again, the Patreon project that I'm happy to be involved with the boys. That's patreon.com/Triple G show. Patreon.com/Triple G as in Garcia show. And check that out. We're posting up a ton of content up there all the time on pretty much a daily basis. And then, of course, the Phone Booth Fighting Patreon page, patreon.com/Phone Booth Fighting, because Frank and I are doing the same thing over there. Frank will be back on the next episode. Thanks for jumping in on this one, George, and I'll be seeing you shortly over there on the Triple G Show Patreon page. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast. Inevitably, your ratings are going to shoot through the roof. So I'm available anytime you need me. I know you'll be hollering. So I'm making myself available. But it was great talking to you, Richard. And shout out to the Phone Booth Fighting Nation that you guys have. You guys are doing awesome stuff. And you're honestly one of the better podcasts that are out there. So keep doing what you guys are doing. You guys have been kicking ass now for quite a long time.
Appreciate that, man. All right. We'll talk soon. See you, George.
All right. See you, Richard.
Everybody be sure to go check out the Amazon banner on the front of phoneboothfighting.com. That's another great way to support the show. If you are shopping on Amazon and getting those home deliveries, as just virtually everybody is in this current situation, all you have to do is go to phoneboothfighting.com, click on the Amazon banner. That's going to take you to amazon.com. And you can do your shopping from there. It will be no additional cost to you. It looks just the same. It feels just the same. You won't notice any difference. The only difference is that because you clicked through that portal at phoneboothfighting.com, Amazon will give us a few cents off of each one of your purchases. So we get a little commission kickback, and Amazon does that for us because we sent you to them through our phoneboothfighting.com portal. So please check that out. The store is still up and functioning, fully operational. You can buy merchandise through the store at phoneboothfighting.com. And also, I think I mentioned of the show for Patreon subscribers at patreon.com/phoneboothfighting. Frank and I have a brand new sticker that we put out specifically commemorating the Corona quarantine. I think you'll get a kick out of it when you see it. You can go over to the Phone Booth Fighting Patreon page, get a look at it, and we're sending that sticker to everyone who joins at any level on our Patreon page. So regardless of what level you subscribe at, we're going to send you one of those stickers that we're only making for people who are subscribing to us during this coronavirus quarantine. For Frank Mir, who will be back on the next episode, for Gorgeous George Garcia from MMA Junkie that guest hosted this episode with me, I'm Richard Hunter, and we'll see you right back here next time on Phone Booth Fighting.